Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me. I got an email last week from Laura, and I was thrilled. And notwithstanding my carbon footprint from Toronto, I'm really happy to be here because in the late 90s and early 2000, I spent a lot of time in this area. I think I probably summited 15, 20, 8,000 to 10,000 foot mountains, and I don't come often enough, and it was the best time in my life, and you live in the best place in the world. Definitely worth preserving. I wanted to just very quickly, how many of you are in the private sector? Put your hands up, please. Okay, government? Okay, and NGOs? Okay, excellent. I'm going to go through this presentation quite quickly because, as you know, I don't have a lot of time. It was called, oops, it's, put it out, okay. Communicating your sustainability practices. Okay, so I changed that a little bit. I took a bit of a different spin on it. I've done a couple of workshops on reporting, and I wanted to ask you, how many of you are directly involved in writing any sustainability reports or any reportings for compliance? Okay, excellent. So that gives me an idea. Okay, so I'm going to go through this very quickly again because there's a lot of information, but this is basically a 3-hour workshop, so I will try to address the key points. So what we're trying to cover today is we're going how to communicate sustainability internally and externally. And again, I use a reporting model, and I use a model from essentially people who have to report, publicly traded companies that have to report because there's a lot of requirements. However, even if you're a small business, I think if you follow what they do, if you look at all the steps that are needed to report, then I think you're in good shape. At the end of the day, I have to say that I've learned a lot today, and it was all the stories that you told that really gave me a picture, painted a picture of the things that you do. So in essence, ultimately, despite all the structural things you have to do to convey the information, it is about storytelling. Then I'll talk about the content, the structure, the audience, and what does the report look like ultimately. And it is a bit generic, and then we can, you can adapt it to some of the, to your situation. Now, communication is about sending and receiving, right? I was reflecting on the fact that in 20 years of marriage, I think that 20% of my sending has been received. And I wondered, in sustainability, how much is it that we send out is really effective? But there are tools to be able to improve that. So communicating sustainability. This stuff, I think you will find it to be fairly straightforward. Whether you're private or public, the stakeholder model is the prevalent model, right? We all talk, and we talk a lot about the stakeholder. Do we really know how to measure and who they are and the priority that they should take? Then we look at essentially the whole idea that we're entering a new era of measurement. In the past, the prevalent model, again, is the financial model, where we're looking at measuring results, right? At the onset of, I guess, climate change and all the regulation that's coming online with regards to carbon emissions and carbon trading, we are now measuring other indicators, and primarily carbon, and there are reports on that, the Carbon Disclosure Project. I have a slide on that. And other environmental indicators. The social ones we were discussing last night are a little bit more difficult. But doing a report or having the intention of letting the people know what you're doing forces you to look at your metrics. There's also a lot of peer pressure, right? You may be blatant in your absence if you don't report. And the benefits, very much, this has been raised through the whole day. The fact that, raise awareness of your staff, your staff's transparency, new investment. And the key thing is with doing a report for whoever you're doing it, whether you're doing it internally for your staff or externally for your shareholders, is that it takes a lot of commitment and time and money to do it well. And I think, in my view anyway, is that if you approach it in a systematic way, you are much more able to succeed in conveying your message. With heart as well, because you must tell a story, right? I'm not going to go through this in terms of the internal value and external value, because these are pretty obvious things. Some external value there in terms of essentially becoming a good steward. We heard a lot about that today, about being engaged in your community, and about the license to operate as well, right? And what does that really mean? What is a license to operate? That's a separate workshop. Strengthening market access and sharing your story. That's one of the big benefits of that. Then we look at essentially your report structure, right? So you can cluster it in different ways, and you can communicate it thematically. The stakeholder is again, as I said, is I would say the most used one. And then you have your corporate principles or commitment. It may be cause-driven. The examples, as an example, RBC decided to use water as a cause to champion. It really will depend on where your priorities lie. But always remember that you have to balance it, because if you say you're doing a CSR report and you're only doing community development, I think it won't take very long for people to figure out that there are gaps in what you're reporting. Then we look at business lines, and as an example, large vertically integrated companies may look to have a higher focus of the higher impact areas, where to airlines as an example. And I have an example with 2 airlines in the UK, which, by the way, was my former employer at Signature. And then the key issues, right? So climate change, for us, another key issue is what? Biodiversity, loss of biodiversity. Another big issue worldwide is water. Maybe, and there are issues here as well. We have a lot of it, but we have issues around water that we have to pay attention. And the preservation of culture. Those may be another key issues to make sure you keep in mind. Then you have a stakeholder approach. How many people have done stakeholder mapping? Just show your hands. Okay, if you haven't, it's not really that complicated. But you look at, and it's an eye opener often. So this is just a classic stakeholder map. There are several of them on the internet on tourism and destinations as well, because they're the same general themes, but with different implications. Some of the, you put the host community, that there's loss of operational license. I know we talked about permits today, how complicated they are. And so this is just to give you an idea. This is, your roadmap, if you will, of who you may be reporting to. So who are they? So we look at, again, the employees, the customer, the suppliers. Once you actually have that map, it's really interesting to, you share it, and then it gives you more focus and really understanding. But beyond knowing who they are, you really, again, this is fairly basic stuff, but you really have to determine how much weight you're going to give. As an example, on the previous slide, the media was not there, but the media could be huge, right? That means they're an important stakeholder, but they become a really urgent stakeholder where there's an emergency, and you may be having other areas fall off the map temporarily. Then the approaches to reporting. I think this is really important. We have the Me Too approach, the classical and the transformational. Ideally, if you start from the transformational point, you'd be really well positioned. I think there is a bit of a progression that happens. Either peer pressure, you throw in there, you do a check mark, a report. That doesn't have a lot of credibility, but it depends. It may be in certain areas that you need to do it quick, and it's better to have it out. The other one, which is the most used, is to influence perception. Essentially, if you're looking for money, if you have, from shareholders, if you want to raise your status in terms of public relations, and then it becomes almost like a PR, right? And this shouldn't be a PR, right? The whole idea of doing a sustainability report or reporting on it is that it has PR value, but it should not be its sole purpose. We have the 5 reporting steps. Again, really basic process. You define your objective. You do an introspective look about where you are in your company. How much do you know about CSR? Do you have the champions on board? Then you prepare essentially a timeline, your internal readiness. I'll just go through it very, very quickly here.